evening you are taking time to be with us. You have a really special event planned for you. Dora Lee Wiley Brown arrived in Waxhaw when she was just 2 years old. She was born in Oklahoma, but I think she really loves Waxhaw. She brought with her wonderful husband, Bob, who was taking some pictures, and their girls, Ann and Beth, and they're all going to tell us stories. So let me tell you just a little bit about these ladies. They are smart, educated, talented, creative. Think of more adjectives for me. Dora Lee said she was here 14 years and her dad accepted a church in Norwood. You know where that is? Not so far away. But we all cried when they left. We loved Reverend E.B. Wiley and his wife Agnes, and Dora Lee and her brother John Dudley. And I mentioned to somebody earlier, Dora Lee, always we called you by both names, first and middle. Dora Lee and her brother John Dudley, not just one name. I like that. Dora Lee in the center went to Mary Baldwin College and University of North Carolina at Greensboro. Then she went to Presbyterian School of Christian Education because that's what she did for quite some time. Church work. Steel Creek Presbyterian, have you heard of that?
Yes.
And Williamsburg Presbyterian Church. She was married in 1962, and Bob was teaching dependent families. They went to Japan, imagine. And after Japan, and that's where Leanne was born, I think, Japan. Then Bob decided to go to Europe. So they went to Germany. What a start for a marriage, right? Then they came back to Charlotte. We're so happy about that. Dora Lee worked with refugee resettlement. She's always helping somebody. She never forgets birthdays and Christmas and whatever. So she helped relocate refugees, doing this for the Presbytery of Charlotte. She's been interim church educator at several Presbyterian churches. Her mother, Agnes, lived to be 96. Now, she's probably going to tell you that, so listen again. Bob and Dora Lee are now very active in the First Presbyterian Church in Charlotte. They have 3 grandchildren, and Dora Lee's brother, John Dudley, so sadly, a pilot in the Vietnam War, his plane was shot down. We grieved about that, and still do. First daughter, Leanne, born in Japan, as I told you. She arrived in Charlotte in time to celebrate the birth of younger sister Beth. And she went to Providence Day School, many of you know about that, Brown University. And she has recruited new poets to read at St. Mark's Church in New York City, a poetry project that was going on at this place in New York City. She lives in New York, but she also has a home in the mountains here in North Carolina. So we were happy she was in North Carolina and could come tonight. She and her husband, Tony, were married at Hot Springs in the mountains of North Carolina. Their child is 16 years old now. Leanne is currently a professor of English at St. John's University of New York City. This happens often to us. But we love the train. Don't we, Johnny?
Yes.
Yes, we do. In 1989, Leanne was the founding editor of a small press, Tender Buttons, that centers around publishing the best in experimental women's writings. Last year, she was awarded a fellowship to mentor at Corpus Christi College of Cambridge University, England. And Beth and her family got to go visit, didn't you, Beth, while they were in England. Second daughter, Beth. So Leanne is a poet and has been since she was a child. She's been writing poetry all her life. has many publications. Beth is a musician, and now I'm hearing she's recording documentaries. Yes, okay. She learned to play violin when she was in kindergarten. Angela. She went to Winston-Salem, North Carolina School of the Arts, McAllister College in St. Paul, Minnesota, and School of the Arts Institute of Chicago. She plays both classical and traditional style. Did you bring your fiddle?
I did.
Are we going to get to hear music?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, I am so glad.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand that she has played her violin by ear with a number of bands. The Gator Gumbo, some of you know about that. They went to Lafayette, Louisiana, to absorb some Cajun music. Is that right? She was graphic designer, librarian in Charlotte-Mecklenburg, teacher of violin to children, youth, and adults. She uses the Suzuki and the Connor methods. Beth and her husband, Rayon, am I always right? Have twin boys, and those boys are musicians. They can play saxophone, clarinet, drums, keyboard, and electric bass guitar. And this family has just returned from Colorado and New Mexico. What a trip. Now, do you see what a famous family we have? And I'm so proud that they would take time from all their busy schedules and drive to Waxhaw to entertain us tonight. And ladies, you do welcome questions, do you?
Do.
All right. And I'm sure Dora Lee's going to remind you she has wonderful pictures over on the table by the wall. Please take time to look at those. Ladies, welcome.
Thank you so much. And we really are going to celebrate a very special event. I told the newspaper a surprise, but it's not a surprise. Everybody now knows it's Gladys' birthday this coming Monday. And I want to read a psalm of Thanksgiving that I wrote about her life several years ago. You'll see some of it's out of date, but all of it is true about her. She and I on a road trip, and I was writing as she drove and told me about some of these special things. Oh God, we give thanks to you as we celebrate the birthday of Gladys Elizabeth McCain Concur, who was born to loving parents, Isa Gladys Winslow and Robert Maxwell McCain, Sr. in Waxhaw, North Carolina, at 10:30 Sunday morning on July 22nd, 1934. Winslow and McCain and other relatives rejoiced in her birth. How grateful we are for the McCain home, surrounded by love, symbolized by their wraparound porch. 2.5 years after Gladys' birth, the family was blessed with the birth of a son, Robert Maxwell McCain, Jr. 4 years later, when Gladys was 6, her baby sister, Carol, was born. Each Sunday, the McCain family attended a Sunday Sunday school and church at the Waxhaw Presbyterian Church. When Gladys was 12, she made her profession of faith in Jesus Christ as she answered the elders' questions. Her pastor, my dad, the Reverend E.B. Wiley, and the congregation rejoiced in Gladys joining the fellowship of believers. I'm just going to have excerpts. The next portion, she names all her relatives that she went to visit on the weekend. And they took a trip in the summer on the train to visit the Winslow family. But then I'm going to tell you that since Gladys' house was right across the street from the Waxhaw School, she visited the students and the janitor, Bill Henry, before she was 6, right much before. Principal Kenneth Miller said, Gladys needs no introduction. She's been coming to school all her life. Now, She's named every single teacher. You might need to know that you remember about the junior highs, but nobody went to school here, did they, at that time? I'm going to skip over that part because we got a lot to talk about. All right, now, Leanne, I want you to read the next portion. Gladys polished this because I wanted you all to know exactly what was in the store, her father's farmer store. And when you go to Maxwell's, you'll just close your eyes and imagine all of these things in the store. So if you want to close your eyes now and imagine you're going in that store.
Farmers Ginning and Trading Company. Maxwell McCain was manager, treasurer, and stockholder of Farmers Ginning and Trading Company on Main Street in Waxhaw. This store was a very important part of the McCain family's life. Gladys and her brother Robert began helping there at an early age. Fresh produce of beans, tomatoes, corn, and okra attracted the customers at the front door. To the right, the candy counter enticed with Mary Jane's, Tootsie Rolls, Baby Ruth's, Powerhouse, and coconut bars. Next came the big cash register with the money drawer below secured by a special combination. On down the aisle, the customers found the canned goods, snuff, and plugs of tobacco with their special cutters. Since no refrigeration was available in the early days, the meat counter was limited to sardine cans and crackers and oiled wieners, ready to be fished from the bucket. A little later, live chickens were kept out back. Robert's job at 8 years old was to catch the chickens every Saturday. Next came the hoop cheese, which was sliced according to request, bologna sold with Johnny cakes and cheese. What fun Gladys and Robert had playing on the large sacks of chicken and horse feed near the platform dock. Gladys remembers her mother, Isa, sewing dresses for Carol and Gladys from the colorful feed sacks. Isa, I've never heard that name before. Is it short for anything?
That's it.
Isa.
That's it.
All right. Next came the red counter, which also included pound cakes. Gladys's job was to keep the drink box filled with bottles of grape and orange drinks, Dr. Pepper's, Cokes, and Pepsi. The water in the box was kept cold so the drinks were ready to open and guzzle. Gladys's job was also to use the feather duster on everything. At this early age, Gladys learned the sacredness of work. The pot-bellied stove, circled by chairs, was shared by customers and clerks on cold winter days, where you could find a checker game being played by John and Henry Collins, black preacher Freeman, Heath Yarborough, Will Davis, and later his son William, Lee Robinson, Henry Helms, and Hugh Mosley. Big Mike was a delivery man for feed and groceries. What was he like?
Very large. Very friendly.
On tables in the back right, the customers could find overalls of all sizes, shirts, and jackets. On the left side of the store was a glass case for needles and threads. Lower were located the socks, shoes, boots, and galoshes. Next came the office, which consisted of a cage with a high stool behind the adding machine and a telephone. Maxwell was the only one who knew the combination of the safe with the money box. The scale for feed also weighed the children as they grew up. Gladys learned her smile and her intense interest in people, which made the store a welcoming place, an important institution in this community.
And now I'm going to let Beth continue it.
So this is part of this, continuing the song that Dora Lee wrote. During World War II, the McCain family entertained soldiers who were stationed in the area. Howard Guion, a neighbor, Ewan, received letters from the McCains when he was in Europe. Gladys remembers the blackouts and the troop trains which made the war a reality. How thankful we are for those soldiers who served from Waxhaw. Neighborhood playmates, mostly were older, were Helen Jane and Emmeline Gamble, Nancy and Lucia Gamble teased her, saying, "You slumbered in your sleep. You have ancestors." Gladys was curious to find out what these big words meant. David and Malcolm Myers were the McCain's only playmates during the polio epidemic. They played too rough, tying Gladys to a tree. Let me keep going now. Keep going. Because of her determination and dedication, Gladys graduated from Waxhaw High School as valedictorian. Theirs was the first graduating class in 20 years to take a trip to Washington, D.C. What fun memories Gladys has of rooming with Esther Massey, Prince, and Joyce Blood and Sue Gamble. You want to read the rest?
I've got it.
Oh, okay, so you got something else.
Oh, no, this is important. I'm going to read about that music.
Oh, good. Yes. So Dora Lee continues. Oh God, how grateful we are that music is such an important part of Gladys's life. From the time she was 8, she took piano from Miss Meta Nisbet at the Presbyterian Church organist. Because the McCains did not have a piano, the G.A. Burgess family let her practice in their living room, which I learned that's Haskell's grandparents, right? Haskell Ergel's grandparents. Gladys practiced with gloves in the winter because the living room was not heated. From age 12, Gladys substituted as organist for Eleanor McLaughlin at the Presbyterian Church. She was thrilled to play for a wedding at Herman Baptist Church. In 6th grade, Mrs. Sarah Chapman Walker moved with her husband, J.A., to Waxhaw. Gladys was a star student among many children in town who took piano lessons from Miss Walker. Twice, Gladys won music medals for the student who had made the most progress. Mrs. Walker took her students to concerts at Winthrop College and later to Atlanta. She insisted that Gladys have her own piano concert during her junior year of high school. Gladys's mother made all of her dresses of fine linen and taffeta. Her 16th birthday was special. She wore a lovely dotted Swiss dress. Her family invited her whole school class to their home to celebrate that birthday.
Right, now I'm going to read the rest. A scholarship at Flora McDonald was the answer to the next phase of her life. Her whole family took her to Red Springs, North Carolina, and stayed with her until her bed was made. And then she mentions other friends that she knew there. Oh God, your eye was constantly on Gladys as she received a scholarship to Peabody College in Nashville, Tennessee. In only 3 quarters, she received her Master's of Math Education degree. Her first teaching position was at Williamsburg Junior High in Arlington, Virginia, where she taught 7th and 8th grade math, later also 9th grade math, and played for the school choir. Isn't that wonderful mathematician and musician? Well does she remember teaching Caroline, John Glenn's daughter. Gladys accepted a position at Horace Mann Junior High in San Diego, California, where she taught math and music. During this year, she experienced a whirlwind courtship with Donald Kerr, a classmate from junior high in Waxhaw. Donald proposed. They began making wedding plans, and Gladys purchased her dress at Marston's in San Francisco. Her mother and sister Carol picked out bridesmaids' dresses at Montaldo's in Charlotte, and on July the 28th, 1961, Gladys and Don were married at the Waxhaw Presbyterian Church by her relative, Leslie Winslow, and the Reverend O.W. Perrell, pastor of the church. Or is that pronounced like Perrell. On their honeymoon, they visited outdoor dramas, including Horn in the West, What Price Glory, The Lost Colony, and Jamestown and Williamsburg, Virginia. Oh God, you have a special plan for Gladys to bless many lives. She accepted a position at Wingate College where she taught college algebra and trig, math for elementary education majors, calculus, statistics, as well as being advisor to the freshmen. She was also director of STAR, a program for remedial students. Oh God, you blessed Gladys and Don with the birth of a son, James Maxwell, on December 1st, 1966. For 38 years, Gladys taught at Wingate, receiving the Presidential Award. During her years at Wingate, she helped chaperone students on the Winter International Studies program. Her first trip was in 1978 to London, and for 10 days, Paris was missed due to a snowstorm. Her son James went with Gladys and the students when he was 12 years old. She took him with her on the Great American Heritage Tour of Washington, Philadelphia, New York, and Boston. Since she took students on these tours for 10 years, she knows these cities well. In 1982, Gladys received a shocking news through a letter that her husband of 21 years wanted a divorce. Oh God, you and her family and friends were her source of strength as she cried. Why? Loaded down by debts her husband had incurred, she scrimped to pay for what she had been falsely involved. Still, her faith in you, oh God, does not waver. She has a close relationship with her son, James, who was only 16 when his father asked Gladys for a divorce. James graduated from Charlotte Latin in 1985 and received his B.S. degree from North Carolina State University. And at the time I wrote this, he was a broker in Wellington, but now he's in real estate in Monroe.
He has his own company.
James married Dana Michelle Ackley in a lovely garden wedding on May 20th, 1995. What joy for them and Gladys when William McCain Kerr was born on March 21st, 1997. And here I have, as a second grader, he thinks he wants to be a zoologist. And where is he now?
Chapel Hill.
All right. It's been a while since I wrote this. After 42 years of teaching, Gladys has been active in the NCS Daughters of the American Colonists. In 2001, she planted a willow tree by the granite marker she dedicated to Scotch-Irish ancestors of the Waxhaws. Serving as trustee for South Piedmont Community College in 1999 to 2003, she sees a new college being formed. Home on the farm since 1987, Gladys continues to teach piano students and inspire all who know her. But since I wrote this, she has been author. You got those books ready. Everybody's seen that, the history of Waxhaw, and then across the street that was the centennial when the women's club moved from this side to that side. There are lots of things she's done that I can't. But we do wish you a happy birthday.
We're going to play
Beth?
the waltz. I'm not going to play the birthday, but we're going to sing, and then I'll play a little waltz for
All
her,
right.
if that's
That's
okay
good.
with
All
you.
right. Well,
So let's
are
sing.
you
You want to
pictures?
sing?
Uh-huh.
All right. So we'll all sing happy birthday to Gladys.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Gladys. Happy birthday to you.
But how did y'all know each other when you were little?
Well, she was it was 2 years younger. And so that's telling our age, isn't it? But that's all right.
That's good.
When you get to be this old, we want to brag about it. Oh, but they're close friends. I'll tell some stories about it. But I want to tell you what a thrill it is for me to come back to Waxhaw. It brings back so many happy memories. I lived there, as Gladys said, 14 years. The time I was 2 until I was 16. I'm celebrating another anniversary. 85 years ago, my parents arrived in Waxhaw. First, it was on almost to the day. My dad preached at Providence Presbyterian Church in the morning, and then he and my mother came on to Waxhaw, and he preached again, but to a very small crowd, just 30 people. So the next morning, their host took them out to Pleasant Grove camp meeting to meet a lot more Presbyterians and Methodists and Baptists. And my dad picked up on a clue that was very important. He realized that people in Waxhaw like to worship and visit with each other. I'll talk about that later. Thankfully, both churches, Providence and Waxhaw, gave a call to my dad to come. I really felt like it was my mother and my dad that they called. Then my father conferred with the other ministers when he got here, and they started an ecumenical movement. They had Thanksgiving service together. And then in the summertime, they combined the vacation church school, going to different churches, different times, but pooling the volunteers from all three churches to teach. And you'll see some pictures back there about that. Just to show you the relationship, my mother's diary says that on December 2nd, they went to a reception over here at the Methodist Church for the new minister, the Huffmans. And 3 days later, her diary says, the Huffmans came to call on the Wileys. And she said, we brought them back to the kitchen, I think, because it was the only warm room. Then a very wonderful, exciting thing happened. My brother was born into our family. And so we were so happy to have our family complete. And you'll hear a lot of things more about him. In fact, I want to tell you, you maybe heard this story about when he was 8 years old, we were at the Methodist Church listening to a Presbyterian guest speaker. And my parents and my brother and I were all there listening, and all of a sudden my brother's ears perked up because the minister Fitzgerald said, Amen. And so then he heard it again, so my brother started marking on his bulletin every time. So at the end of the service, he said, Mr. Fitzgerald, you said amen 13 times. The church was a very special place for us. My brother and I made very good friends with Cy. He only had one eye, so he said he was Cy with one eye. But he came in and dusted on a Sunday morning to be sure everything was just right, and he rang the church bells. So I learned how to ring the church bells from him 7 times 7. Later on, my dad had the idea of reading through the book of Mark, since it's the shortest gospel, and invited everybody in town. But when we finished, he let me ring the church bell. So I got to practice. Of course, we had wonderful children's choirs and adult choir. Bessie Massey was a wonderful director, and she even went to Providence for a choir practice to help that choir get ready for their homecoming. Later on, I found out that my parents really did have a choice of where to live. They could have selected this rambling house in Providence with no neighbors, or they could come here. Well, since they both grew up in small towns, they knew that Waxhaw was the best place to raise their family. Then perhaps you all know the house. It's where Brenda Burns is living. It's 504. I never can keep straight the names of all these northwest, west streets. But the kitchen was a favorite room of mine, maybe because it was warm. My dad raised the kitchen cabinet and inserted a great big slab of marble, and that's where Nina Dunlap taught me how to make biscuits. Nina was also in charge of the wash. Wash day was very important when my dad had to wear a white shirt every day. Long those days, I'm glad we don't have to do that anymore. So I bet y'all remember the roller, the agitator, and then you squeeze the water out for the rinse tub, then the bluing tub, then the dry tub, and then hang the clothes on the line.
I started to say, and one time my little brother put his finger on it when he was doing it.
Oh, and that's always a scary thing that could happen when they're helping too much. But I love to go out in the backyard and run through the sheets. Everybody loved to do that. In the springtime, our backyard was fairyland. We had larkspur. We'd come back every year, and I have a picture of there with my brother when he was 3. The larkspur is as tall as he is. Beautiful pink, blue, purple, and white. My dad sometimes borrowed a mule and plow to get our garden ready for planting, and we had competed with Mr. Walker, when the Walkers lived next door, to see who would get the first ripe tomato and how many potatoes. If they'd get more potatoes, who'd get the most. But Brenda Burns has brought the house back to really giving it new life. She's replaced it with windows and central air and heat and refinished the floors. She was very thoughtful to invite our family to come and see it. We love reminiscing. There's even a vent cut in the front room up, and I guess it was to let the heat come up if there was any heat. And I remember my brother and I peeked down through that vent when my father was conducting a wedding ceremony. Then let's see. My dad had his office upstairs for a while, and then he moved to the church for his office. And I would run across, when my mother went to Montreat and we were in charge of cooking, I ran across the backyards, the Gamble's yard, and to the church to get my father to help me figure out how much rice to keep. And of course, we both figured it wrong. We had too much rice. My 3rd grade teacher was also my Sunday school teacher, Ruth McCain. And when I was ready to recite my catechism, I rode my bicycle over to her house, and here she was hanging out clothes on the line, but she left her wet clothes on the basket and came into the living room and heard my catechism while I was in the mood. All right. Then let's see. I wanted to tell you about the schools, remembering about the school. I'm delighted to find another Waxhaw student. there were so many children that were that lived on farms, and they were needed to go pick cotton in the summer. So we had what they call split term. And my mother's diary says August 4th, school starts today. I hate to think of those children in that hot classroom. And October 24th, school starts again. So see, we'd go for six weeks, and about the mid-September we'd get out, and then we would be out for 6 weeks before we went back. And every year, I joined my friends to pick cotton. We took our picnic lunch and we just made a wonderful, fun day. Only one day. Little did I think about the children that had to pick cotton every day. And I did not realize about my African American friends that they didn't have a good school to go to. But now I think I've figured out why Frankie Davis Thompson, who was a second grade teacher, decided to have a Tom Thumb wedding. She fit it in right that first 6 weeks in the hot summertime. And we took pictures out in the yard. We had the wedding out in the yard. I was chosen as bride. Basil Broom was the groom, and Louis Erdel wore his choir robe as minister.
What grade was that?
Second grade.
You have pictures of that?
I do, back there, right there. I want y'all to look. But we were close to the school. But then the shocking thing, the school burned to the ground in my second grade. And the first thing I thought of was that bunny rabbit in the cage near my seat. But the churches came to the rescue, and I came to second grade over here at the Methodist Church, lower level. And I remember marching to the women's club for lunch, where the fire department is now, before it had moved. And then after that, I went to third grade. Also, the school hadn't been finished. I was hoping I could go to the Masonic Lodge in fourth grade. They got a new school, just not 2 stories, 1 story school. And
Where was the school that burned?
well, it was in the same location.
Where? I don't know.
Well, I'll take you by there. And you have a new purpose for that building now, don't you? Is it a special, you don't have school there anymore.
Yes, there is school there.
Oh, there is?
It's called Providence Street School.
I don't think, of course, the gymnasium did not burn, and I think that's where high school went. Can you imagine one room school for high school? But the Kenneth Millers were friends of ours. We ate at their house and they ate at ours.
And his wife was principal at Twin.
Oh, really? All right. That's great. Perhaps you've heard this story about my mother being worried about all those teachers that needed to be shown appreciation. There was no PTA. She had been a teacher, and so she appreciated people acknowledging what she was doing. So she invited every teacher to come for breakfast before school. Just regular menu. The only thing I remember unusual was she served hot pineapple slices, so with everything else. But then years later, the women's club appointed, or people volunteered, so that every classroom had either 2 or 3 grade mothers. So this perhaps her breakfast inspired that. So I wanted to tell you what we did for fun. My mother and daddy invited 20 children to come to my my 6th birthday when I was starting school. And you'll see pictures of that. we were all lined up according to height. My brother being 3, and Emily Gamble was probably 16. So 22 counted my brother and me. My mother had little hats and black cats, and in her diary she said, churned ice cream for the 10 o'clock birthday party. Can you imagine? When you had ice cream, it was a long process. I loved playing house with my friends. Daisies became fried eggs. Hollyhock blooms were Jell-O with a dab of soap suds for whipped cream. The other children on our street decided to have a carnival, just invited, just everybody in town, to the children to bring their pets. Some of them even dressed their pets up in their clothes. And we got a ribbon for everybody. Everybody's dog got a ribbon. And then Fifi Massey dressed up in a turban and told fortunes. There's a picture of her back there in a wagon. Then when the movie theater came here, we had a change of movies right often with a good Western on Saturday. And we had birthday parties with that. But my mother loved entertaining. On January 6th, she said that 26 elders and deacons from Providence had come for a turkey buffet. And 4 days later, 22 officers and their wives came for a fried chicken buffet. And my mother's quote, I don't know when, I've had so much fun. Now the men's club, I think it had been organized earlier, but my dad kind of helped revive it. And so he was with the group when they were making plans for Governor Broughton to come. And the whole group felt like it was important. They served lunch. So nobody volunteered except my dad. So he rushed home and told my mother that we were going to have the governor. And she started looking in her Boston cookbook and planning, and she said, and I've got delicate pink roses. That the centerpiece has always been as important as the food. And she said that the dinner, somebody, a Senator Massey and Mr. Jesse Williams came to the dinner, the lunch, and Mr. and Miss Davis came. And then they went down, the governor was taken down to see the Andrew Jackson Monument. And that night, the governor spoke to the men's club, and it was ladies' night, so they had a big crowd. Another project that the men did was the water system was improved. And they had a picture in the Shop Observer of it's Jimmy Steele, who was a real beauty, blonde. She was standing under a windmill attached to the Rodman's well, and in the background, the photographer had the picture of the water tank. And then my dad was invited to go down into the gold mine, and they just, when they were pouring the gold bricks, they dripped one little drop of gold in a little flake. I meant to bring it to show y'all, but I still have it. And now during the war, my dad, had ration gas, and so he bought a Victory bike, real tiny little wheels. I mean, it was still the same size, but it just solid sort of rubber. And he would always go down in the mornings and visit with all the people, Methodist, Baptist, Presbyterian, in the stores. And so he could make his rounds into some homes on his bicycle. And so I wanted to tell you about.
Dora Lee, was that because gas was rationed?
Oh, yeah, gas. He needed the gas to go to the Presbyterian Hospital or whatever hospital because members from Waxhaw and Providence were there. And he was not able to do as much visiting. That was the time when ministers really did visit. I wanted to tell you about the morning that my brother came home with this great big orange. And my mother said, "Where did you get it?" And he said, "Oh, some soldiers spent the night in our church and they gave it to me." So she had just had a Thanksgiving dinner the day before for this another minister's family that we knew, and there's 7 children, so she still had the tablecloth on. So she rushed up to the church and invited all of them for breakfast. Breakfast was really her thing. And so the soldiers felt that tablecloth, and they looked at those red roses, and they just couldn't believe how lucky they were. They were sure glad they gave my brother an orange.
They were the maneuvers or something? They were on the maneuvers?
Maneuvers, yeah, maneuvers. The Red Army and the Blue Army were supposedly fighting each other. And then I'm tying this up. My mother really started writing her diary, mentioning things of beauty. And so February 21st, she said Ms. C.S. Massey's flaming japonica next to a bush of golden bells. February 22nd, my jonquils and hyacinths. February 23rd, maple tree showing signs of spring. February 22nd, brightness of the sunshine on the snow. And especially, what a thrill to see John Dudley's face when he first saw that first snow. But the main thing that we did, I would say once a week maybe, we went for walks in the woods. Mr. Ben Price, who was in this building when it used to be,
We called it a department store.
Oh,
It was our department store.
we called it Niven Price.
Niven Price.
And he gave us permission to go walk in his woods. If the entrance behind the manse was not too far away, we'd rush through the brimstone, duck under the barbed wire, and then rush to our pretty place. There's a picture of that. And we'd have picnics, we'd take neighbor children, we took the Methodist minister's son, and then we got to pick blackberries in the July, and then we got to cut our cedar Christmas tree every year. But this, listen to this, October 31st, my mother wrote, "Both Van and I are feeling low. We went to a walk in the woods for 3 miles and came home. Our spirits were lifted." So that was the favorite place that we went. And then my mother did come back for an antique show, and she bought me some Queen Anne's chairs, 4 for me to give this daughter and 4 for me to give that daughter. And then, of course, we came to hear, listen, and remember the drama here. But I'll just end on this one quote. My mother said, "I love the way people visit with each other and eat together." So that's sort of the end of my little thing, but I'm ready for questions if anybody has any. That brings, yes.
This is a side thing that had anything to do with Waxhaw. My mother's family, my grandmother was a Brown from Steel Creek, and her father was a Stockton from Steel Creek, and they're buried
in that
in
cemetery.
that cemetery, as well as her parents as well.
Yeah, but Brown, they asked me if my husband was any kin to the Browns there, but I had met him before I went there, but I didn't get married for 10 more years, so I was not kin to those Browns. But they were a very leading family, and those are your ancestors, right?
Sure.
That's great. They had this deal that the Steel Creek people didn't really accept you until you had bought a cemetery lot.
Well, while y'all think of questions, like you said you wanted me to play something.
I
Like,
do.
the only thought I thought we were trying to think of something. She said, "I'll tell a joke." Not a joke, but I said, "Oh, do you want me to do a hymn?" And you were like, "No, do something besides."
PK, Presbyterian kid.
You said it was hard to be a preacher's kid, like everybody associated with the church. So I played. So I just was, because you guys requested, I'll play the song Ash Grove, which is she walked down the aisle at my wedding. That was what they played for my mom to go down the aisle. Wedding, so I'll play this for you.
Good.
And,
That's great.
it has words. It has a hymn. It's called, the folk song title is Ash Grove, but it has a, you probably recognize the hymn.
Anybody want
More questions? It was just an interlude before more questions
well,
to give her a break.
No, I think we've had
We did a lot of
session. But we're especially thankful for Gladys and having her bring this gospel truth to Waxhaw.
Yes.
And that's what you all call it, the gospel truth. All right.
Series.
Gladys has not slowed down one bit,
I
has she?
know. Well, now, I have
You learned way too much about me tonight. They were extremely generous, and I thank you so much. Birthdays are wonderful, and when you're 85, it's pretty special.
Well,
So thank you so much. But Dorothy, I wanted you to tell about the day your mom and dad drove into Waxhaw.
Well, I did.
What did they see and hear that very first day?
My mother was from Oklahoma, and they had the big combines out there, and she was used to big fields of wheat, and so when they drove in, she saw a man cutting grass with a scythe, and she's like, "Where am I coming to?" And then there was a patch of, not there anymore, a patch of rotten cabbages that just smelled terrible. And then she saw a pig, a little pig, jump out of this building with a child chasing her. This was her first impression. She says, the first impression you have is not always true. She ended up 14 years later crying in her antique bowl because they were moving. So she really loved it.
She
My
still has
daddy
the
loved
bowl too. Every time she sees the bowl, she tells us that's from a hand-painted bowl flowers from 2 years. Why was she holding the
Was she
bowl?
in the car?
She was
Moving?
didn't want anybody
Oh, yeah.
to pack it. It has to, that's the only way you can get there safely.
Oh, while they were driving away?
Yeah.
Oh.
Down this main street? What?
Yeah.
Well, I think in this room, Johnny, you went to the Presbyterian church some, but you were not born when all this was happening.
No,
He's too
but,
young.
of all the people that my mother talked about, Sarah Lynn is, she
And your
talked
grandmother.
about, my grandmother, they talked so much about the Wileys and Dora Lee. And then when I heard that you were coming, last month, I said, I've got to meet Dora Lee. But after hearing you talk about your mom and her opening up her home to all these people, and then what your dad did, I can see why mother and grandmother thought so much of you.
There's a picture of your grandmother back there.
Okay.
Did you spot it? It's with
I
those
haven't been over there yet.
vacation church school, and I've got a little arrow that says the teachers.
Okay.
And I recognized your grandmother right away.
Yeah, I haven't been over there
All
yet.
right.
But anyway, it's so nice to see the girls and everybody.
Right. Well, there is two pictures of Gladys and Esther Prince, of Esther Massey, and we got together at Maxwell's, and then we went to see Frankie Davis Thompson when she was quite elderly. And then there's another picture of camp meeting. Those are my little color pictures. So Frankie Davis and Collins Thompson, and you can see that they're out in front of their tent. And we're going back to see.
You're going next week?
Next week. Yeah.
Can't be.
Camp meeting. Camp meeting.
Well, Beth, we'd love to hear you play more, but Leanne, tell us a little bit about your poetry. Do you have a little poem you could recite for us?
So we're trying to get Tom to
Something-
be the star tonight.
Well, indeed, she is the star, and we appreciate your
I could
being
sing
with.
one thing. I do sort of rewritten hymn poems. Let me just think of one. Come go with me out to the field to look upon the rose, whose glow remembers once the sun gave garnets for her clothes, whose crimson cadence soon will stop the music of the spheres, won't cease but barely register a fraction of Earth's years, while light still vibrates on our brow, the subtle minutes drag, the fly is droning with the bee, our outer body's flag.
Way to go.
That's sort of a rewrite of an Emily Dickinson poem in another style. My teacher gave us a French, gather your rosebuds while you may, for tomorrow will die kind of poem. It said rewrite it Emily Dickinson style, so that's what that was.
And also
And
a Martin Luther hymn.
Is it?
No, I meant you have rewritten
Oh, right.
Martin Luther
Okay,
hymn.
one more. Almighty fortresses, open your doors, all swords to plowshares beaten. Why do our leaders lead us to war, all vengeful hatred eaten? For still our ancient foe within us each doth grow. Our need this hour is great, disarm this cruel fate. Our words of love undo it. that, so. Send it to me, sing it to me.
Dora Lee, we thank you.
Oh,
Thank you,
I love
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
I'm so glad.
Karen Johnson, the very young birthday cake ice cream.
That's
Oh,
a
birthday party. I haven't had a party in forever. So thank you so much. And please stay and look at her pictures. They're wonderful. She's got them all, you know, identified. There's a little script so you'll know what's going on. And how wonderful that after some time, she still remembers all this. And that her mother had a diary which helped her to sort of pull it together. Now, she didn't mention her mother also wrote a book, a wonderful little book. You didn't bring that,
Some of
did
those
you, Lynn?
stories
Are from the book?
Yeah.
And then Dora Lee did a book, right, Bob? Was it your 50th wedding anniversary? And she documented so many things. So if you have not written a book about your family, your children, your ancestors, you might want to do that. Yeah. But we're grateful that you came. And please stay, talk to these folks, have some more food. I know Karen will be happy for you to do that.
Please take some with you if you'd like
And I want y'all to meet Sarah, who's in my Waxhaw 101 class. And bless her sweetheart, she says she really wants to know the history of Waxhaw. And she's gonna come back and we're gonna talk about it and visit. And she made a special effort because I called her at the last minute to come tonight so she could hear you girls. But thank you each one. Thank you for being here.